I'm here to talk to you today about emotional intelligence. I first became fascinated with EQ, emotional intelligence, when I learned that it is twice as important than IQ in technical ability in driving personal performance. At the most senior levels of organizations, it accounts for more than 90% of the difference between the best and the rest. Hi, I'm Torrence Robinson, Senior Director of Global Community Affairs for Fluor Corporation. But more importantly, I'm just an individual who is passionate about ensuring that young people like yourself have the tools you need to be successful, to be leaders. And make no mistake about it, emotional intelligence is an essential part of being an effective leader. So, what is emotional intelligence? It starts with understanding your own emotions, self-awareness, being able to manage them, self-regulation, using those two qualities and skills to achieve your goals, motivation. Once you're able to understand your own emotions and manage them, then you're able to understand the feelings and emotions of others, empathy, and use that to help influence people through your social skills. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the first step of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness. It's the ability to identify your emotions, be aware of them, their triggers, and their impact. Now, you may say, well, what is a trigger? A trigger is a person, situation, or condition that makes you emotional and causes a certain reaction, a certain response. For example, if you're a military connected team and you learn that mom is being deployed yet again, that might be a trigger for you, a negative one that causes anxiety, fear, perhaps, disappointment, sadness. But on the other end, maybe it's game day and you love sports. Maybe you're on the team. But even if you are a fan, maybe it's a time when you spend time with your friends and you really look forward to it. That could be a positive trigger for you. Have you ever known a circumstance where your emotions triggered a response, negative or otherwise, in others? There's this great example in the movie called The Pursuit of Happiness. You may have seen it before. It starred Will Smith. He plays the character of Chris Gardner, who's an entrepreneur who lost his job, dealing with a failed marriage, homeless, and raising a son all at the same time. In this particular scene, Chris Gardner is talking to his son who's at the playground putting up shots, right? Trying to get his game together. And Chris Gardner comes up and says, you know what, son, you may want to not put too much time and energy in this basketball thing because you know what, I wasn't very good at basketball and you know these things can be hereditary. And when his son heard that, you could see his whole body language change. His head bowed, shoulders slumped over. But the Chris Gardner character in the movie realized at that moment the impact that his emotions, his words had on his son. Fortunately, he pivoted and told his son, you know what, you don't let anyone ever derail you from your dreams, not even me. You've got to own it, right? So what are some of the benefits of self-awareness? Number one, being able to react better to uncontrollable factors. Say it's game day, thunderstorm comes through, cancels the game that you've been looking for the past month. No reason to be overly emotional and dramatic about it. You can't control the weather. Certainly disappointments are natural, which is another benefit of self-awareness. You internalize and understand that it's natural, it's okay, and you face and deal with those disappointments. One of the significant benefits for me, I think, is predicting the response of others. An example I can think of is when you have to deal with negative social media, right? You get that flaming text message that comes across that is about you, and you can imagine if you had that experience, how that makes you feel. Now, understanding the anxiety, fear, anger that it causes, maybe you'll step back when you have the opportunity to choose between sending that negative text message or not. Which leads me to the next, or the last benefit of self-awareness, which is constructive responses, which is really a part of self-regulation. So a recap, self-awareness is recognizing and identifying your emotions. Self-regulation is the action component, being able to adjust your behavior accordingly, whether temporarily or permanently. Now, there's a great movie that you may have seen called Inside Out. The main character is a young girl named Riley in the middle there, sitting at the table. And Riley is dealing and struggling with moving from Minnesota to California, being able to be ripped away from friends and the hockey team that she loves so much. And she's dealing with all these emotions that are rattling around in her head: joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear, right? But in this particular scene at the dinner table, joy and sadness, nowhere to be found. It's just anger, fear, and disgust rattling around in her brain. And she got to a point all of a sudden, as her parents were trying to do the parently thing and trying to lift her spirits because they did not know what the problem was, Riley blurts out, "Stop, shut up, leave me alone." And you can only imagine what the parents felt when she heard their child yell back at her. And what you can probably imagine what would happen to you if you yelled like that to your parents. Well, she was sent to a room, she was punished, and you don't want that to happen. It's important to think before you act. Now, tips for improving your self-regulation skills. Number one, be more aware of your emotions and how you react to them. Number two, keep calm under pressure. Take that 24-hour rule. Breathe in, breathe out. Whether it's taking a drink of water, walking around the block, you have to remove yourself from that situation and calm down. Matter of fact, when you're able to take that 24-hour rule, step away, it gives you an opportunity to reframe those negative thoughts. And perhaps you'll come up with a more constructive way of responding to the situation. And last tip, believe in yourself, right? You want to surround yourself with positive people whose skill set you may be able to emulate. Because when you see other positive people react and behave in positive ways, you'll see the success and will hopefully include that in your skill set and in the ways you respond. Now, as we go to the next component of emotional intelligence is motivation, right? There's this quote I love. The two most important days of your life, the day you were born and the day you find out why. It's a quote about one's purpose and motivation. But understand that motivation isn't just our ability to get out of the bed each day, do our chores, go to school. It involves our personal reasons for doing something. It's a combination of our drive, commitment, perseverance, optimism to get something done beyond money and recognition, right? Beyond money and recognition. Now, I'm not sure if you heard this parable about the gazelle and the lion. I've heard it several times, but there's a motivational speaker, Eric Thomas. He broke it down in a slightly different way that I'm going to try to share with you. Each day in the African savannah, the gazelle wakes up and knows that in order for it to survive, it has to run faster than the slowest gazelle. Not the fastest lion, but the slowest gazelle. It has to keep up with the pack in order to survive. In the same regard, the lion wakes up and understands in order for it to survive, it has to run. It has to run to survive, to eat. So even if you are a top predator in the jungle, right? You are a gifted writer, lyricist, poet. You still have to get up each morning, put in the work, put in your time in your craft to get better, right? There's no way around it. But what's the difference? Aside from one is a predator and one is primarily prey, what's the difference between the gazelle and the lion? It's the motivation. The gazelle is running from something. As soon as the lion stops chasing it, it stops. How many of you will work as long as someone is pushing you, motivating you, encouraging you, coaching you, calling you, rewarding you? Once that stops, you stop. That's gazelle behavior, gazelle mindset. The lion, though, the lion is always on top of it. Its motivation is internal, it's intrinsic, it's hardwired. It's not dependent upon external factors to motivate it. So I encourage you to improve your motivation. The first step is to know your purpose, know your why. That's going to serve as the North Star, the anchor when things get tough. When there's no one externally motivating you, you got to go deep. And that's where understanding your purpose and your why comes from. You want to set intermediate goals. Say you want to be able to solve climate change, be a scientist, engineer. Perhaps the first step is getting A's and B's in your science and math classes, right? Getting prepared to take environmental advanced placement, joining the robotics club, making sure that you're doing everything in your power to be towards the top of your class so you can go to the school that you choose, that you select. To develop lion-like habits, not gazelle-like where you're just dependent upon external factors. You have to develop those lion-like behaviors to get things done. If you want to lead others, motivate others, you have to project optimism. People want to follow people who are positive, who believe in the goals they set for yourself, for the team, and others. And lastly, you have to be committed. You have to be consistent and faithful to the goal at hand, to the team. Those are all critical. Now let's move to the fourth component of emotional intelligence, and that is empathy. There's this expert out of Houston, University of Houston. Her name is Dr. Brene Brown, and a lot of what I'm going to share with you comes from her work. She defines or describes empathy as fueling connection with people. She says it's about feeling with people, whereas sympathy is, she says, drives disconnection, empathy drives connection. Now, the next set of slides I want to show you comes from a video that she did. So imagine you have a friend who feels that they're stuck. They're in a dark place. They feel overwhelmed. Next slide. Now, for a friend, what you want to do is, they're down here, they're down low, and you're up here. What you want to do as a friend is come down to where they are mentally and emotionally, right? You want to let them know that they're not alone. I'm there with you. All right, so as you're thinking about what to say, next slide, it's not always about what to say. Sometimes it's just about being there. So you see on this picture, you see the rain clouds over both of their heads. The friend, the bear, is just put itself in the same emotional space as the friend, the fox bear. And sometimes that is what's important, just being there. Next slide, right? People want to know that they are not alone. That is the key to empathy. So how do you become more empathetic? 5 tips. And this one you'll see oftentimes, or many times, is being able to put yourself in other people's shoes. Number 2, stay out of judgment. And oftentimes that's something that we want to do. We want to place the blame on someone else for feeling the way that they do. Don't do that. Allow people to feel the way they feel, not right or wrong. Stay out of judgment. Third one, be quiet and listen. You want to listen to people. That's an important skill, listening. You want to be able to recognize emotion in other people that you may have felt before, which is a close cousin to putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And lastly, being able to examine your biases. We all have them. Sometimes they're hidden, sometimes not. But it's those biases that can interfere with our ability to listen and empathize. So be cautious of that. The last component of emotional intelligence, social skills, which is what you need really to handle, influence other people's emotions effectively. Now, there are 5 subcomponents to social skills. We only have time today to talk about 2 of them, but I will list all 5 for you. There are persuasion, communication, and conflict management skills, the ability to build rapport, and collaboration. Let's talk real quickly about persuasion. You may have seen the movie Hidden Figures. It's about these three women, African-American women, working at NASA, working on one of the space programs, launching John Glenn, the astronaut, into space, into orbit for the first time. And the character, you see Janelle Monáe, she's an actress, she's playing the role of Mary Jackson, NASA engineer. Now, Mary Jackson, again, worked at NASA. She needed to take a course at the local college in order for her to be eligible to receive a promotion that she deserved, that otherwise she was qualified to do, but she needed that course. But here's the rub. This is back in the 1960s in the Virginia area, and schools were segregated. She had to go petition the court to allow her to go to school, take that course that she needed so she can get that promotion. Well, she used her persuasion skills, convinced the judge, got the promotion, and if you've seen the movie, the rest is history. Now, the next sub-component of social skills I'm going to talk about is conflict management, right? Whether you are a teen or an adult, conflict management is a skill you will circle back to over and over again at home, at school, and when you're in the workplace. Two words I want to leave with you: tact and diplomacy, which can be used to diffuse difficult situations. Now, tact is the art of making a point without making an enemy, right? What do I mean by that? Say you and your friend, you're about to go out, and your friend really doesn't have great fashion sense, and they put together a combination that makes no sense. It looks crazy. But you don't necessarily want to tell your friend that, because they could be kind of sensitive to that type of direct criticism. You may have to say things a little bit differently, a little bit more tactfully. That's tact. Now, diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. Not letting them have their way, but the art of letting someone else have your way. Now, an example of that would be if your parents put you in charge of you and your brothers and sisters to make sure the house was clean before they got back home. You're in charge, but your brothers and sisters are slacking off, right? They're not doing what needs to be done. Now, you could holler and scream, say names, threaten to tell your parents, but perhaps another way to gently flip the script is convincing your siblings to finish their assignment by gently reminding them how hard mom and dad work to support them, and how happy mom is when she comes home to a clean house. Right? Don't we want to do something nice for mom? Right? That's a different approach to it. So that's more of a diplomatic way, perhaps, to approach it. So what are some skills that you can use to manage conflict? Understand that's a reality. Hiding from it won't solve anything. You want to deal with the problem, not the person. Don't make it personal. Be assertive. Being assertive means putting your views forward confidently, yet calmly, but be respectful. Learn to negotiate. Again, a skill you'll circle back to over and over again. You want to be understanding. Again, putting yourself in other people's shoes. And lastly, learn to say, I'm sorry. Right? It's not soft, admitting when you're wrong, but it's actually takes strength and power to say, I'm sorry, my bad, and mean it. So that wraps up emotional intelligence. It's not something that you can learn to master after just a few weeks. I mean, it takes time to ingrain the mindset and the skills and proficiency in these skill sets. But even for me, I'm still on that journey. What I invite you to do today is to join me on that journey. So until next time, it's Torrence Robinson. Thank you for listening.